Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first episode of my dance journey from my channel, Everything Dance, Your Mentor. A big welcome to you all, and thank you for supporting my channel. This is my first live, as I say, and basically I'm going to go through my whole dance journey from beginning to where I am today. And I've got a cat, a cat company. If you want to see more about my life and where I now live, then check out my main channel, which is New Beginnings, my everyday life in rural Cyprus. So welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. As I say, I'm going to go through everything that's got me to the stage of where I am now. But this first episode will actually go through my very first lesson of dancing. You'll see that I now live in Cyprus, but this was all based in England. So anything I refer to is from England, and until I get to the point of where I'm in Cyprus and other countries between. So I've tried to write down some notes to just try and keep this for you in the right kind of order. So I don't want to jump anything too much. So let's begin with the very beginning. And I want to say that I danced before I went to school. I didn't go to nursery or kindergarten or anything like that. So this was really my first real social thing that I did. Maybe that's why I'm into dance more than anything else. Let's first of all say about the first place where I went dancing. And it was a stage school, but it wasn't full time. It was dance classes, but to go and hopefully do something on the stage. So it was a stage school rather than just a dance hobby club kind of thing, which basically means if you went there, you weren't asked, do you want to be in the show? You were in the shows and things, but we'll get into that when we go through shows. So the actual building was like a great big hall. Now, if you know, like a church hall, but it wasn't a church hall. I think it was like a community hall, something like that. So it was a big hall and it had a stage on it, and the teacher would be on the stage. And it was very old, tumbly down, but there wasn't anything else in the area that could have been used. And this stage school had many branches over South London and Surrey. So there was different venues, but I went to the main venue. The other branches were more for just to pick up people from other areas, but I went to the main one. And it was so old that there were no toilets there. Now, this day, that would be a day and time that would be totally unforgivable, but there were no toilets. If you needed to go to the toilet, bear in mind you were wearing leotards. There was a uniform, but I'll go to that in a minute. You were wearing leotards and in the winter tights as well. If you wanted to go to the toilet, you had to, particularly in winter time, put all your clothes back on top to keep warm, change your shoes because you must never walk outside in your dance shoes. We'll do that another time. And you had to get all dressed, and then a parent had to take you, because it wasn't a busy road, but it wasn't a like residential small road. So a parent had to take you. You had to cross the road and go in public toilets across the road. Now, we're talking about the 60s, 1960s. And the toilets across the road were really old, really smelly, nasty things. And it turns out these toilets were originally built because some houses only had outhouses or outside toilets. It was built for the community, and they were in a bit of a state. They had obviously the very high flush, the tank high up, and the chain was a pull chain. And even when we were older, we couldn't go across on our own because we couldn't reach this toilet chain to pull. So that was that. And also, I used to go and watch my older sister. She's 2.5 years older than me. I used to watch her dance. And so I didn't get bored watching. My mum and the other mum sitting there used to say, see how many rats you can see. And the rats used to run across the back of the stage. Can you imagine that these days, allowing children into a venue with rats? They never ran across what I would say the dance floor. They never ran across there. So they obviously had some nesting going on backstage somewhere. So you always got these rats who used to sit there and see if you could count them. In the end, there became more and more, obviously. And the dance teacher, instead of standing on the stage, she ended up on the floor demonstrating for the class instead of up on the stage. Well, I will go to it in time, but not too long after that, they actually built a British Legion hall elsewhere, not on that plot. That was pulled down. And I think they made some more houses there, but they built a modern British Legion hall, really good. But because we're still in the 1960s, I think it might have been early 70s, I'm not sure, they still built toilets with the great big high chain, and they had wooden toilet seats. I can't abide wooden toilet seats, and so they were still old-fashioned looking. So that's really a brief overview of the actual where I went. They also had other, I think certain days you couldn't use this hall. If I remember rightly, it was Saturdays. You couldn't at the time use the old hall. So they had a community centre nearby they could use on Saturdays. But this wasn't a community centre as you probably think of it now. It was a very old house with lots of small rooms, and there would be different classes going on in these rooms. But we'll talk about that further. Just want to give you the setup, first of all, of where I went. And the chairs, I can picture the chairs in my head now. They're going to be very hard to explain. They were like a very light pine colour, highly varnished. They had rounded backs and a kind of a dent where you sat on the chair. And I remember them for this reason. And this is the start of how I started dancing far earlier than anybody else. When my sister was dancing, and I must say the owner of the dance school was a very tall, thin lady, very balletic looking, very tall, very thin, hair in a bun all the time. You didn't have her when you started dancing. And the deputy teacher was who we had at this point, and she was a very large lady. Didn't give you the impression of a dancer at all, but apparently she had danced and done her exams with the owner, hence how she got the position. So we have the deputy. So the deputy's teaching, and she has a reputation of being shouty and quite strict. And I was always a little afraid of her. But apparently she always liked me when I came in, and we sat with all the mums up the end watching. And she liked me because I always had ringlets, very tight ringlets, not fake ringlets. If I have my hair down, you will see if I wash it, just go ping. And if I go in the rain, it's terrible. It's quite very curly hair even today, even though it's a lot thicker now and it weights it down, but still very curly hair. And she used to adore me. I was the perfect look for a stage school dancer. And of course, I was too young. They didn't allow you to start till you was at least 3.5. And then if you had older siblings, because you had some idea of it, but normally about 4 years of age for ballet. So basically, I was too young to start, but she used to pick me up and cuddle me. And I was a little afraid of her, but I let her do her thing. And what I used to do, sometimes while I was watching my big sister, I would stand up at the chair while they were doing bar work. And remember, in these days, there weren't ballet bars in these community halls. So everyone used to grab a chair. So I would use the chair I was supposed to be sitting watching on. But I was so small that I couldn't reach the back of the chair like the dancing girls. So I would hold the seat like the bar, and I would do it all. Now, because I'd seen my big sister practice at home, I knew what to do. So my back is now to the pupils and the teacher's saying what to do, and I'm doing it. And I'm only, I'm under 3. I must be about 2.5, and I'm doing it. And I must say I was a very podgy little girl originally, but I'll show you some pictures in a minute as well. So I was doing it, and she was obviously impressed by this. And the other thing is, I remember always the classes, if you paid the money, was £0.50, which I believe is something like 12.5 English pence. And it was quite a big silver coin. And my mum used to have those ready to pay for lessons in her purse. So to keep me quiet as well, if I was tired of doing the ballet, she would put some on the chair so I could just play with the coins and other coins as well. And one time I was moving them around on this very loud chair, because I'm moving around like scraping on this varnished chair, making a noise. And this teacher starts walking over while the girls are dancing. She starts walking over. And my mum's like quite anxious because, as I say, this teacher had quite a reputation of being scary. And my mum's like, oh, stop doing that, Dawn, stop doing that. And the teacher had arrived at this point. She went, no, leave her. And she looked and she said, look what Dawn's doing. And with the music playing, I'm choreographing them, moving them around, and I've got them sorted out. There was a thing at this era where dances, if children stood in a line, they would often have the tallest one in the middle and then down to the smallest one. And I would be doing that with the coins. Oh, that's my cat, sorry. And I would be doing that with the coins. This is another cat. So I would be doing that with the coins, the tallest coins, the biggest ones, onto the smallest coins. And then I'd choreograph doing them round in circles. I love choreography to this day. And then making them go in circles and then into diagonal lines. And she said she's got a taste for dancing in many different ways. She is going to be a dancer. And she said, I'm going to ask the owner of the school if we could let Dawn start far earlier than anybody else. And that is how I started dancing far earlier, and always ended up in classes with pupils and other children above my age and what technically should have been my ability. So I was dancing with girls in like what would have, in the end, if I'd started at the right age, been in the next category and above. And that's why sometimes as well in show dances, every other show I would end up catching up my sister's class, and then the next one I'd be gone, because she would also do kind of, you got put up into the next class, but you would stay with the ones already in that class for some time, and then they would move on. So you never all just went to a different day and time. You would move into the bigger girls' class, dance with them for I don't know how long, but it must have been a show, and then they would move on and do the same to their next level. So this is how, if you ever see me in dancing pictures in groups or whatever, I'm always the youngest, and why I qualified as soon as I could, whereas others qualified sort of older. So that's basically the start of that, of where I started dancing. Basically, let me show you the uniform. Now this changes, and I will be doing an episode later on. I'm trying to theme what I'm talking about each episode. So I will go into the uniform and how that evolved, and how dance shoes and dance wear evolved in my dance journey. But I just show you a little picture here. And the dance uniform was, when I started, a red leotard. Now in those days, the leotards were cotton, only cotton, and only had long sleeves or like almost 3/4 sleeves. There were no sleeveless leotards or anything like that originally. and you wore white socks, and for ballet, pink ballet shoes. And for tap, which I'll get to in a minute, was white tap shoes. And for modern ballet, which is modern or modern dance, pre-freestyle days, they were black ballet shoes. So here's a picture of me. I think this was my first ballet exam, so we're jumping a little bit here. This is me with my certificate for my first ballet exam, but you can see the leotard. Oh, and we had to have matching colour headbands. So here's a picture. So I'm afraid that doesn't stay up very long and I can't pause it, so I'll show it again. And as you may or may not see, there was a little badge on the leotard. You had to buy the badges separate and sew them on. So every time you needed a new size leotard, you just unpicked the badge and put that back on. So I'll show you that one more time. So that's that. But let's talk about my first show. Obviously, I was far younger than anyone who'd ever been in a dance show before at the stage school. When I show you the picture, I'm the small one because I'm with my sister, who this is a time when I said we caught up. And it wasn't that I caught up with her. It was the fact I started younger. And my first show, there was lots of chat apparently, and discussions about would I be all right doing the show. It was a proper full-fledged show in a London theatre, and I was an icicle. Now, for our shows, the dance school had 3 or 4 dressmakers, professional dressmakers, and you just got measured up for everything and paid the amount they said. So they were all exactly the same. And something I remember about this icicle costume was 2 things. One, I didn't like it because you had to wear big white knickers with it, or underwear, whatever you want to call them. And I didn't like that you could see them or wear big white knickers. So that was something I remember. I think it was to make us look cutesy. Again, that would be something that wouldn't happen these days. And the other thing was I was an icicle. So there's a crown, which you'll see in the picture, and the points are down. But all the other children were insisting it was a crown and they wanted the points up, like fairy princesses or whatever. But the teacher was really cross, and my mum said no, down. They definitely said the icicle headdress is to be worn down and fit on your head, because they measured round your head. So my mum made me wear it downwards, and I was quite a nervous child of doing the wrong thing, didn't like to do wrong, and all the others were wearing them up like a crown on the head. Let me just show you a picture so you know what I'm talking about. I remember I'm the little one with the icicle. So my mum had previously taken this picture when we first got the costumes at home with my big sister, who's the snowflake next to me. And I was in a panic. I thought, oh, it's wrong. They're all saying, oh, we've got crowns. Anyway, she made me wear it to, I think, the dress rehearsal with it that way. And all the others came on with them the other way. And I was so worried I was going to get shouted at. There was a lot of shouting if you were late, whatever age you were, or if something was wrong, or your lace came undone. And she went, stop, stop. She said, Dawn, Dawn. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I nearly ran off, but I didn't. I think I was more frozen with fear. She went, Dawn is the only one with her crown on the right way. Your icicles, darlings, your icicles. And she called the dressing room mums in for our age group, or my group. And she said, they're wrong. Only Dawn has got hers on the right way round. So I remember that. So here's a picture of me again in my icicle costume. So that was the story of that. Do I remember my first lesson? No, I don't. I don't actually remember, because to me, I've been dancing a long time on the chair and at home. So it wasn't like this concept of going to a brand new lesson. It wasn't that, and something strange. And I'd been there so many times and obviously knew the people in the class and so on and so forth. So I don't actually remember my first lesson. I remember things of dancing when I was little. I remember a lot of things about it, such as things, oh, thanks. Blue Self-Reliance is watching. Thank you, Blue. That's really kind of you. And what we do for new people watching, Blue will already know because she supports all my channels fondly. We say, go and watch Blue Self-Reliance. Go and check out Blue's channel. You'll meet lots of my YouTube friends, possibly if they follow me on this channel as well. We've got a really good community, and this will be a great opportunity for new people to visit my YouTube friends. So that's great. So yeah, I remember a lot about dancing lessons there and little things you had to do and didn't do. And I remember paying this £0.50 for the lessons, and my mum saying, make sure she writes it down and writes it down in the right place. And what it was this deputy, we call her the deputy for now, this deputy dance teacher's mum took the money with a friend of the mum, and they would sit there. And I remember one of their names still, and she couldn't see very well, but she wanted the control of it. And she'd often write it down, tick someone else's name quite often. And then there'd be a big to-do that you hadn't paid for the lesson. You paid each time you went. I don't like this concept these days, people paying a term in advance and so on and so forth. So you paid each time. So my mum said, if it's wrong, tell the other lady, say she's written it in the wrong place, and then the lady would see that it wasn't written down. So I used to panic about that as well, because my mum would be cross, and because the deputy was a bit cross about things, I didn't know what her mum would be like as well. So yeah, so I remember that. About the shows as well, I will do episodes about the shows. There's a lot of shows and performances before I became professional. I've got a lot to talk about those on other episodes. But something I remember about that particular stage school, I don't know if it was the same for other dance schools and stage schools, so let me know in the comments below. But every time we had an outfit, apart from that very first one, you had to have ballet shoes or whatever type of shoes dyed the same colour for each costume. Now, can you imagine the expense of that? So you needed a new pair of dance shoes, and we always did a repeat show. I think that was the years in between, or every second year. I can't quite remember. So you would do the same dances. You'd have to squeeze into the costume, whether it was 1 year or 2 years later. You had to squeeze into the costumes again. You couldn't have them made too big for the first time. But the worst thing I always remember is my mum didn't want to buy me new shoes to dye. So when you grew out of you had to have the pink ballet shoes for lessons and the white tap shoes for lessons. You couldn't come in these coloured ones. So as we grew out of those, she would always keep them. And then when we got to a show and you needed a different colour, she would dye them. But bear in mind, we'd grown out of these shoes. Can you imagine it? And I used to really dislike that. I knew the first show was going to be bad enough because she'd never dyed the shoes that fitted us at the time. But sometimes I got my sister's hand-me-downs if I hadn't worn a hole in the toe of the ballet shoes by then, which seemed to happen a lot with old ballet shoes. So sometimes I'd get away with that for a while, but more often than not, they'd wear a hole in the toe by the time I'd got to them. And then she would dye them, and I had to squeeze into those. So I always remember shoes. There were some parents there that would go out and buy new shoes for their lessons and dye the ones that were still fitting them. That was the norm. But my parents had 3 children, 3 of us in total eventually. And my mum thought it was a waste of money, really. I don't know cost of dance shoes in those days. Maybe that's something I should look into. That would be interesting to see prices then, prices now. And there will be an episode talk about point shoes, ballet point shoes, which was really different in those days, let alone how you could get hold of them. So that's going to be an interesting episode. So do I remember a lot about the actual dance classes? Not so much from young. I remember, as I say, different elements of the dance classes. I remember my first tap class. Now, this was held in that second community house, I'll call it, the community house, on a Saturday morning, and you had another teacher then. So there was hierarchy. So let's say she was one of, after the deputy, there was 3 or 4 other teachers, and I would say she was probably number 3 out of the other teachers. And there was a hall attached to this community house. Let's call it house because it was an old house and lots of little rooms. And because there were so many little ones doing tap, it had to go in this hall. But as time went on, this hall was no longer available to us because it was for the community, and being a Saturday, they often had jumble sales and other things like that. So in the end, this hall didn't get used. We just had these very small rooms to use instead. But at that point, we used the hall. But I always remember there were so many children there that we had to dance the width, all in a line, and we were all squeezed like this doing this tap class because that's how many there was. And she, again, this teacher danced on the stage, and we're like this. Now, you weren't allowed to start tap till you was, I'd like to say 7 years old, which I agree with, you need to be older. I know there's tots type tap, but for proper dancing, I would say 5 or 6 because you need to totally use the foot. But anyway, that's another episode to go on to about ages of dancing. But I remember that class. And as I say, I was a little bit of a nervous child, and I tried to be on the side of the line where she would show you something, you'd all do it, and then they'd go along one at a time. I think that might be why you didn't start till you were 7, because they didn't want you to stand there and be bored or running around or messing about, because she would see 1 at a time or 2 at a time. And I used to try and be at the start of that. 2 reasons. One, I used to think, I'll forget what I was supposed to be doing by the time it gets to me. And secondly, I've never liked waiting. I get nervous waiting for appointments in a waiting room or anything like that. So I wanted to get it out the way. So I would always stay there. So I'm just going to have a little drink and refresh for a minute, and then I will carry on with the chat. But here's something else that will be coming up on these live streams, something else for you to look for. So basically, if there's anything you want questions about, as I say, for anyone and everyone, even if you don't dance or have never danced and you're just interested or want to know more about my dance career, but I will save questions for the right theme, because I don't want to get too sidetracked and start rambling off about other things. As I say, I want this to be my document for myself of my memories of dance as far as possible in the right order. But we will be doing videos in between, randomly, Q&As, answering your questions. So as I said, that any random questions, you might open up a new topic idea for me as well. So I will be doing big episodes on things like point shoes. If you want to start a dance school, I can tell you about that. Lots of different things. As I've said before, the different eras of dance that I went through. I love that I danced through the 70s and the Fame era and all that kind of thing as well. There's going to be many episodes on dancing exams, qualifications. If you've got a child and you want them to dance, what will be the best subject? I could go on and on. So these will be in between these dance journey videos. It's the cat is trying to climb up the table. That's why it's wobbling. Let me get the cat. Another cat. So basically, if you've got questions, if I don't answer them in the Q&A, we have special Q&A days. If I don't answer them, I have saved them and I've got more appropriate times when I will answer them. They're random questions. I might just do days of random questions. So do let me know if you've got any questions. The cats are complaining because it's 4 o'clock here in Cyprus and they eat their dinner at 4 o'clock. But I was on one of my other lives and having such a wonderful time. I didn't want to leave that one and jump onto this one. So what else do I need to tell you about? Basically as well, when I was little, what else can I remember from little? We could even talk about dance programs and how they've evolved. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and it's talking about TV in the 70s, and they're talking about Angela Rippon. Now, if you're not from England, you may not know Angela Rippon. She was a newsreader, and there was suddenly a program with 2 comedians one Christmas, and they were always saying they didn't want women newsreaders, but they let Angela Rippon become a newsreader on TV, and there was a lot of outcry about that. And in this comedy program, she's sitting pretending to read the news, and suddenly she pushes the desk away, does a high kick. She's wearing a skimpy, for those days, outfit, and she starts dancing and singing and whatever else. And on this 70s podcast, they were saying, this is from a couple of years back, the podcast I'm listening to, they were saying, they shouldn't have really thought a lot bad about that if they were from today, because she might be on the program Strictly Come Dancing. Well, it turns out she is now actually on the program Strictly Come Dancing. She also presented an original version of that years ago. But what I'm trying to get across basically is the fact that how times evolved and different things, how eras change and things become completely different, and the world of dance, even in my era, has changed that much as well. So I've got lots of things to say and lots to do. And it's funny, by the way, this Angela Rippon, because a lot of younger people or other people that watch it don't know who she was, and she did this program dancing. They're saying, isn't she amazing that she's learnt to dance? Yes. So if you want me to talk about different dances, I've been a judge and an examiner. I can tell you about that. I can tell you how to get into dance careers. I will say, don't expect to snap your fingers and me to give you all the answers, because you will see I say, don't wish for it, work for it. So here's that. you can say is, oh, I can't dance, or I've got 2 left feet, or I've left it too late in life. I taught a 90-year-old man how to dance, and there's nothing about being fit or being unfit, but we'll talk about this in future episodes. If you've got any themes you want me to discuss, then do drop them in the comments. And I'm also looking for, if any of you want to come up and be on a chat talking about dance. Of course, it can either be a bit about your dance career, it can be your dance studio, whether you're a teacher or a pupil, the fact you used to dance years ago and haven't danced since. I love to hear all dance stories, whatever they may be. And here's some more things coming up on this live in future editions. Anyone can learn to dance. The trick is you just need to find a good dance teacher. Don't pick someone who's only been a dancer to teach you. You need to know how to teach. So someone like myself that has been a teacher and a professional dancer. If there's anything you want to know or you've got anything to say, don't forget, of course, to hit that thumbs up and drop me a comment. I gladly will read all your comments and be interested in your questions to feature on other episodes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, and tell me what you want to know about next time in the next live. Remember, there are pop-ups, so you need to be subscribed and hit the notification bell in order to know when a live has started. Thank you for being there. You're awesome, and see you next time.